All right. I think we live. We are live. We are live. I'm gonna turn this down. We are live. All right, so I'm gonna pull up my slides. Can y'all hear me? Zoom. Can somebody come off mute and let me know if y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, guys. So again, welcome to another Business Funding Made Easy One-Day Masterclass. This will be the last one-day masterclass. So it is a bittersweet event. So welcome, guys. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like button. It helps our content get out to a wider audience. In this video today, we're going to be breaking down all the steps that you need to get funding for your business in 2023. So we're going to give you a step-by-step process, show you the ins and outs on how to get funding for your business, show you exactly how to find banks in your local area and how to clean and structure your personal credit to obtain the maximum amounts of funding. So if you're looking to get funding for your business, you're in the right place to be. So today's session, again, like I said, this is our last one-day masterclass. We will be transitioning to a 3-day business funding sprint, which I'll give you guys more information about later. Other than that, I'm here. This is Audrey, owner and founder of the CBCA Network. So I'm here giving my 2 cents on how you guys can obtain capital for your business. As we go along through today's session, if you're on the Zoom, on the VIP session, or if you're watching this on via live stream on YouTube, if you have any aha moments, any wins to share about today's session, make sure that you use the hashtag Business Funding Made Easy as you go along through today's session. All right, so a little bit about me. My name is Audrey Truesdale, born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. Started my first business back in 2014. I also am a SCORE volunteer. So for those of you who are new to business, or if you are looking for someone to kind of help guide you in your business or your business journey, SCORE.org is a great free resource for business owners to tap into in all 50 states and all major metro cities. It is a free resource. You can get a mentor who can help you with whatever, ins and outs or struggles you may have within your business. So please make sure you utilize SCORE as a resource. So I volunteer with my local Charlotte chapter. So highly recommend that service. All right, and then just a little bit real quick, because I don't want to take up too much time. I started my first business back in 2014 and created real estate wholesaling. Closed a few deals, did pretty well in 2015. And then in 2019, kind of came back on the scene, did a few deals. And then 2020, I was able to close some deals and obtain over $160,000 in funding for one of my businesses. All right. Now, why should you obtain funding, right? That's the big question. That's the big, elephant in the room. Well, statistics show that 70% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years, right? And we want that number to go down drastically. So our mission and our goal here at the CBCA Network is to help more businesses stay in business for longer and obtain more capital, right? But 90% of the businesses said that the reason why they went out of business or were no longer in business was due to a lack of working capital, aka no money left behind to fund the business. And so that's what I'm here to try to eliminate, showing you different banks, different tricks, different strategies on how to actually go and obtain funding. All right, so what is your North Star, right? As we go along through today's session, you have to keep this in front of you, because if you don't have a North Star, if you don't have something that you're pushing towards, it's very easily to quit. It's very easy to get sidetracked. It's very easy to just say, this doesn't work. Why am I wasting my time? But if you know what your North Star is, if you understand what you're aiming for and what the goal is, then you have something to work towards and you can stay the path. It's not going to be easy. It's just going to be worth it when you get that $100,000, $200,000 in funding. Okay. All right. So what are the benefits of business funding, right? You can pay for inventory. One of my favorite reasons is paying down personal debt, right? Having access to business funding allows you to pay down personal debt. Another one is buying real estate, buying commercial properties, right? I think as business owners, it's essential that you look into buying real estate for your business. And then you can hire experts. You can hire coaches, accountants, attorneys. These are all people that you need on your team. With working capital, you're able to hire these people. All right. All right, real quick. I think somebody's not muted. All right. So here's a little bit about, some of the business funding I was able to obtain just for one business, a part of that 160,000 in funding. But we'll kind of break down that here on the next slide, right? So in total, that was one business was able to do about 170,000 in funding, right? And then you can see the highlighted portion, right? I always emphasize that particular portion because, and I was just telling the VIP folks, right? I myself have suffered from credit challenges, had a late payment, hit my credit report back in January 2020, and still was able to get access to the funding that you see on the screen. Now, that those highlighted fields, that BB&T, the Navy Federal, and the Divvy card, those were all, I was able to obtain all of those within a 2-week time frame. And so I'm going to be breaking down how I was able to go from late payment in January to being able to get almost $60,000 in funding in less than 30 days. Okay. So that's what today's session is about. How do you do this? Getting 10, 20, 30,000 every single month. Right. And then you can see some of the approvals here for our startup CBCA network. Same thing, right? You can see a $15,000 business line of credit. You see, Amazon Net 55, NTB, BREX corporate card. So kind of the same. Some were new, some were kind of familiar that you probably heard of, Quill, Uline, etc. But just like anything, guys, I've been denied more times than I can count, but I just stayed the course. Again, that's why you have to really understand your North Star. You have to really be mindful of what are you aiming for? What are you shooting for? And just kind of always keep that at the forefront, right? Because you have to trust the process. You have to understand that denials are part of the game. They can take you out of the game mentally if you allow them to. All right. So we don't want you to do that. Now, as we go along through today's session, always keep in mind, what is credit, right? It is your ability to borrow money or access goods or services with the understanding that you'll pay later, right? It's buy now, pay later. Lenders, merchants, and service providers offer credit based on the confidence that you can pay them back, right? So the stronger your credit history, your credit profile is, the more lenders feel comfortable lending to you. All right, so FICO versus FICO scores, right? So for those of you who are not aware, there is a difference between a FICO score and a vantage score. Now, vantage scores are becoming more popular in the mortgage community. More and more talks have been out there about vantage scores being used to help people qualify for homes, because FICO scores have different scoring models, and we'll break down the different FICO scoring models. But one thing that FICO does do that Vantage does not do is Vantage kind of looks at all areas of your overall, like where you live, your zip code, your employer, things that FICO doesn't necessarily take into consideration. So that's why Vantage scores are becoming more talk is becoming widespread about using Vantage scores for home loans, because they take into consideration other factors, right? FICO is a third-party, private, publicly traded company, right? So they're a publicly traded company, and they are known for their proprietary scoring models, and we'll get into those different FICO scoring models. But the main thing to take away is that FICO scores are what 95, 98% of all banks use, right? So knowing your FICO scores versus FICO scores will allow you to have better opportunities and better chances of knowing where you stand when you go into a bank and ask for funding. And then again, like I said, FICO was established back in the 1950s. And just a real quick caveat, most people are not aware that personal credit is actually younger than business credit. So today we're going to talk a lot about business credit as well. Business credit has been around since the 1800s, right? Dun & Bradstreet is an over 100-year-old company. Whereas with FICO was kind of established in the early to mid 1950s. So just kind of looking at the timeline, personal credit has kind of, new on the scene, right? It didn't really become popular until the mid 70s, early 80s. And even then, FICO didn't have a scoring model or algorithm like they do now. They didn't develop the first FICO 542 until probably the late 80s, 88, 89, and then they rolled it out 91. So just understand that personal credit FICO is a little bit newer phenomenon than business credit, and we'll get into the differences of the two. All right, and then just for informational purposes, there is a new FICO scoring model, the FICO 10T. It is here. I haven't seen a lot of banks pulling FICO 10T. A lot of them are still pulling FICO 8, and we'll get into the different scoring models here. But just understand that this is what's coming down the pipe. This is what a lot of banks will be using to kind of look at your credit profile and evaluate if you are a good high risk or risky borrower. All right. So common credit myths, right? Pay your bills on time. We've all heard this. If you pay your bills on time, you'll have perfect credit. It's not necessarily true, right? We've also heard that if I pay my cards, to zero, that will help my score, right? We've all heard that. Just pay your cards off, Not necessarily 100% accurate. And we'll get into the reasons why. And then the last one is checking your credit will hurt your credit score. We've all heard, hey, you don't need to be pulling your credit. It's going to bring your credit score down. Those are all myths, and we're going to break down those myths and kind of explain to you why they are myths and why having the proper knowledge, which you'll get today in today's session, will allow you to kind of debunk some of these myths. And I'm going to step away real quick. I just want to grab my phone so that I can see the questions in the chat on YouTube. All right, so give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to pull up YouTube so I can see the questions in the chat. All right. Whoop. All right, so we'll throw this up here. Whoops. All right, cool. Can y'all hear me on Zoom?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, so those are the common credit myths that we've all heard and we've all been exposed to, right? So FICO scores, how are they calculated? Well, 35% is going to be payment history, right? You're paying on time, which that is the largest component of the credit score, right? One late payment on your personal credit profile can drop your score 50 to 100 points overnight. Because that's the largest percentage of the overall FICO score. But one thing that I want to highlight on this actual training is that 15%. A lot of people ignore or neglect that credit history portion of the credit profile. A lot of people think that, hey, I have good credit. I pay my bills on time. I keep my balances low. The bank should just give me any amount of money that I want, right? But what you have to understand and realize is that banks also want to see that you've been able to maintain credit for a length of time, right? They want to see that you've been able to handle personal credit, revolving lines of credit, mortgages, whatever's reported to your credit over a length of time, right? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? As you go along on those time frames, FICO rewards you for the longer that you've been able to establish and have personal credit history. Now, 10% is going to be credit mix. The other 10% is going to be, new credit, AKA inquiries. All right. So that's how we calculate or evaluate how our scores are being calculated out of 100 points. Now, can somebody tell me between these three answers, what would you say is the average credit score in the United States? Anybody? You can type it in the chat too. I'll pull up the chat.
Below 700.
You said below 700?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who was that?
Brenda.
Okay. Anybody else? Somebody said below 650. Okay. Below 650. Got it. All right. Well, you guys were actually not correct. It's actually 711, right? The average FICO score in the United States is 711. Now, it's interesting that, everybody said below 700, right? Below 650, because most people would assume that, right? But the national credit score in all 50 states averages around 711, all right? So just knowing that, we know that most people don't have a problem with a low credit score. they may not necessarily have a structured credit profile. And that's what we want to focus on today. How do we structure our personal credit to allow a bank to get us 10, 15, 50,000, 100,000 in business funding? All right. So FICO scoring demystified. Now, again, those same 3-5 components that we talked about, the 35% per payment history, 30% utilization, 15% is going to be credit history, 10% is going to be new credit, and then 10% is going to be credit mix. Those factors come into play. But if you could kind of look at my screen, remember I talked a little bit about those credit myths. So late payments, right? Just looking at this, a late payment from, let's say, 3 years ago is not negatively as impacting as a late payment from 3 months ago. So that's where you have to decipher, because a lot of times when people reach out to credit repair companies or they're fixing their own credit, they say, hey, I want to wipe off this late payment from 4 years ago. Not understanding that if you get that late payment updated, or if you get that account removed, you just lost 4 years of history. So was it really worth it to dispute something that's not even really impacting your score outside of the 24-month look back period? So just understanding that, in all things, late payments really only sting you from the first, I would say the first 9 to 11 months, those first 9 to 11 months. Now with this new FICO 10T, you may be looking at probably 18 months, right? But nonetheless, once you pass that 18 months, you are in the driver's seat. And remember, all credit can be built, maintained, and restored. All right. So never feel like because you don't have good credit that you're out of the game. It's always a way around it. All right. Now it's outstanding debt. You see here, if you're looking at the chart, if you pay your cars to absolutely zero, your revolving accounts all the way to zero, the most points you can get is 55. Whereas if you were to pay down or keep a $1 to $99 balance, you maximize the utilization portion of that 30%. So again, paying cars off to zero doesn't allow you to maximize your personal credit. So you always want to leave a small balance on your personal credit cards. It doesn't have to be, crazy. You can just, leave 50 to 100,000. I mean, 50 to 100,000, $50 to $100. Because that's going to help you max out that personal credit part of your profile. Now, length of history. Again, like I said, if you don't have at least a minimum of 12 months of history, you are going to suffer. You are going to suffer. But luckily, there are some things and some strategies that you could put in place to kind of get past that 12-month mark. And then new credit, right? You see here, if you have 1 to 2 inquiries, you max out, right? 0 inquiries, yeah. You could, be at 0 inquiries if you want to be a little, methodical and always be in a good position. But I would say 3 inquiries or less is ideally where you want to be. 3 inquiries or less. All right. And then just looking at a overall profile, 100% payment history, like we said, utilization somewhere around 3 to 5%. No negative items, no derogatories, no bankruptcies, etc. And then age. The age of the file is what I want to really emphasize, because a lot of people are new to credit. A lot of people are talking about credit on, different platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. But they don't talk about the credit history. They talk about all the travel cards. They talk about all the credit hacks, but nobody's really telling you that, until you reach about 12 to 18 months of personal credit, it's going to be a struggle, right? So just understand that, if you're new to credit, if you're building your personal credit, you do want to try to get over that 12-month hump as soon as possible. That's why you want to start today. That's why we have today's session. Now, 17 total accounts. I say 10 primary accounts is a good sweet spot, and then two or less hard inquiries. All right, now this is just an ideal personal credit profile, right? This is just for anybody who's looking to build their personal credit and get it established. You want to get at least a minimum of 3 primary accounts with limits that are at least $2,000 or more, right? You don't want to be getting $5,000 and $1,000 limits, because then what happens is banks will bucket you. And when I say bucket you, they'll categorize you based on the limits that you currently have. So if you have $1,500 limits, then other banks will match that. You want to get out of that bucket. So as soon as possible, you want to get your personal credit limits over 2,000 on at least 3 of the primary accounts on your profile. And then authorized users. If you're going to use authorized users, make sure they have a minimum of 7 to 10 years. 7 to 10 years, okay? And then a minimum of about $10,000 in available credit across all your open accounts. All right. Now, for ideal credit profile for business funding, right? If we're trying to get funding for our business, ideally we want to have 10 primary accounts or more in good standing. No derogatory items, charge-offs, repossessions, late payments, or collections. We want to clean that up, and we'll show you how to do that. Utilization, 10 to 15% per round of funding, okay? 10 to 15% per round of funding. And then the average age of file, ideally, we want that to be 5 or more. Now, if you're at the 3-year mark or the 2-year mark or the 1-year mark, that doesn't mean that you're out of the game. But ideally, you want to have at least 5 years or more of age on your credit profile. All right. And then 3 inquiries or less per bureau. So 9 total. So you got 9 cracks at getting credit throughout the year where it doesn't impact you as far as your personal credit score. All right. Now, here's some tips to get some automatic approvals. Now, when we talk about automatic approval, we're talking about you apply and instantly get a result of approved. All right. So no new inquiries in the last 60 days. So again, even with a lot of inquiries on your personal credit, it doesn't put you out of the game. A lot of inquiries in a short window is what will determine whether or not you're able to get funding, right? If you have a lot of inquiries in, let's say, a 6 to 7 day period, that's going to hurt you more than, let's say, if you had 20 inquiries over the last 12 months, okay? A lot of inquiries in a short window is what hurts you, all right? No new accounts in the last 90 days. We were talking with a gentleman on the VIP session, and he mentioned that, he opened up a couple accounts within the last, 1 to 2 months. Banks look at that because typically the way FICO does it is they have a 3-month, 6-month, and a 12-month look back period, right? So that first 3 months, FICO really doesn't give you many points for that because it's a new account. They want to see how you handle that 6, 12, 24 months down the road. All right. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, sorry about that, y'all. I had to answer a call. Give me 1 second. All right, so if you have new inquiries within the last 60 days, that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? But just understand that, if you have new inquiries that are outside of 60 days, so if you apply for credit 90 days ago, 180 days ago, it doesn't put you out the game. Utilization, ideally, you want to be somewhere around 3 to 5%. 3 to 5%, anything over that, over 15%, you're kind of in the danger zone for business funding, and we'll get into that. And then 30 accounts or more. So if you had student loans in the past, if you had a house and you refinanced it and you paid off your first home loan, or if you paid off your house, or if you paid off a car, keeping those accounts on your personal credit actually helps you because it shows that you're able to borrow money, pay it in full, and make the bank whole. All right. So 30 plus accounts will kind of keep you in line with having a fundable business personal profile. All right. So here's just a few data points to be aware of. Is that when you're trying to get funding for your business, if you have multiple addresses, multiple names, multiple employers, this can be a issue. I just was helping a client. We applied for a line of credit at a bank here locally, and we hadn't heard back. Usually we hear back from banks within a week or two, and we hadn't heard back from this particular bank. And they were saying that, hey, we're still, evaluating the application because we see 2 different addresses on here for you. That could be a red flag to some banks. So 1 name, 1 address, 1 employer. And so for those of you that are in the VIP session, you have that dispute letter that you can craft and send to the bureaus, telling them that, hey, this is my only name, my only address, my only employer. All right. You want to do that as quickly as possible, even if you don't necessarily need to clean your credit or have credit repair issues. You want to get one name, one address, one employer as soon as possible. So always pull your credit every 90 days and make sure that that is accurate as possible. Always pull your credit at least 90 days. I recommend every 30 days, but at least every 90 days, pull your credit, make sure you see one name, one employer, one address. All right. And then if you have comments on open accounts, you want to get that cleaned up, right? If you like took a deferment for your mortgage during COVID and the mortgage company is commenting saying that, you know, you have a deferred payment on your mortgage or whatever the case may be, you need to get that off of there because the bureaus is kind of telling on you, right? They're putting out information that necessarily doesn't, you know, necessarily need to be disclosed that lenders can see and use that as a reason to deny you, right? And then again, one name, one address, one phone number, one employer. Also, for those of you who are disputing inquiries, or if you're working with a credit repair or whoever to help you remove inquiries, and you are using the fraud dispute method, just understand that if you put a fraud alert on your personal credit scores, on your personal credit profiles, you may get denied or you may not get those automatic approvals that you're looking for. I had a situation where I applied for the Costco City Visa card. And at the time, I was working with a credit repair company that was helping me remove my inquiries, and come to find out that they placed a fraud alert on my actual Equifax profile. And when Citi was calling me, they weren't calling the phone number that I put down. They were calling that credit repairs number, that credit repair service number. And I didn't find that out later until I got the actual credit, the fraud alert, and seen that the number was different. So needless to say, I got denied, but had I would have had the right number on there, I probably would have been able to, you know, get approved, because that was the only thing holding me up. That I had a fraud alert. So I say all that to say, fraud alerts can trip you up if you're looking to get automatic approval. So just make sure that when you pull your credit reports, if you need the link in the description, for those of you watching on YouTube, we do offer the Identity IQ credit monitoring link. You get a free 7-day $1 trial. That's not free, a $1 trial for 7 days. So take that advantage of that, pull your credit, see what's reporting, and then go from there. All right, so FICO scores versus credit profile. The scores are cool. That's what all the people on Instagram and everybody shows you, their credit scores, but most people don't talk about the credit profile. The credit score really only determines what your interest rate will be. That's why a lot of people now are saying that, you know, now is not a good time to buy homes because of interest rates. It's not necessarily true, because you can always refinance, but more so your credit score, the higher it is, the better interest rate you'll get, right? So just keep that in mind, right? Now, automatic underwriting versus manual underwriting, right? Automatic underwriting is where you hit all the check marks for a bank to feel comfortable lending to you without having to show tax returns or bank statements, right? Whereas manual underwriting, which is what a lot of credit unions do, is where you actually have a human being who pulls the application, does the review of your personal credit report, does review of your business application, and everything is done manually by humans, right? So it just slows up the process. It could take a week, it could take 2 weeks, right, to get an answer back. So that's the difference between automatic and manual underwriting. All right, and then just understand that your inquiries are rated by the lender. So if you're applying with a lot of furniture stores, a lot of online retailers, the Klarnas and the Afterpays of the world, just understand that some lenders may not look at that favorably. They may not necessarily like that you're applying for a lot of credit with quote unquote non-bank issued or vendor credit, right? Excuse me, store credit. All right. And then so FICO versus credit profile, right? FICO has over 20 different scoring models. One scoring model that you definitely should be aware of is the SBSS score, your FICO Small Business Success Score. Okay. The SBSS score is a FICO generated score. They blend together your personal experience and your business experience profiles. So this is a score that the SBA went to FICO exclusively and asked for a proprietary way to come up with a scoring model for them to lend SBA loans. And then other FICO scoring models you may not be aware of is health insurance. They have a FICO score for that. They have car insurance, rental, right? If you're trying to rent an apartment, all of these things come into play. Now, let's look at the different scoring models, right? Most of us are familiar with FICO 8 as that is the most widely, most popularly used version since about 2012, 2011. Before that, the FICO scoring models were the FICO 542. Excuse me, the FICO 8 came out around 2007. I'm sorry, not 2011, 2007, 2008. No coincidence that the FICO scoring model changed during what was called the Great Recession, right? No coincidence that now they're saying that we're in a quote unquote recession, that they changed it again. Okay, just keep that in mind, guys. But understand the FICO 542 are still used for mortgages. So if you're applying for a home loan, that is a different scoring model than if you're applying for a credit card. It's the same with an auto loan. A FICO 542 auto loan score will be different from a FICO 8 auto loan score. So just be aware of these different scores, because even with the FICO 542, one bank, like for instance, First Tech Credit Union out on the West Coast, they pull Experian, but they use the FICO 2 model. So if you apply for a credit card, they're pulling your FICO 2. Your FICO 2 is a mortgage score. So typically you wouldn't expect the bank to pull your mortgage score, but they use the FICO 2 version. All right. So just keep that in mind. Now, approvals versus review scores, because I get this question a lot. Hey, what score do I need to get approved? What score do I need to get approved? You need to understand that your bank card score, your auto score, and your mortgage score are different scores and scoring models that lenders use. So even when you see, like in your online banking, Capital One says, hey, you have a 720, Wells Fargo says you have a 700 credit score, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's an approval score. To get the approval scores, you have to actually go to myfico.com, get your copy of your credit scores, and then look in those review scores. Look in that auto, that bank card, and that mortgage score. All right. So just be aware of that. Okay. There's different scores based on what you're applying for. That's why we talk a lot about the profile and not the scores, because the scores will vary based on the profile. So just think of FICO as taking your profile, and then they put an algorithm on top of it that generates a 3-digit number. All right. And then let's talk a little bit about the bank tiers, right? So you have different tier banks, right? You have more nationally based banks, right, that are lending in all 50 states, Chase, Wells Fargo, Citi, Bank of America. But if you look kind of towards the bottom, you see there's tier 4 banks, right? Those Credit Ones, the First Premiers, the Synchrony Bank department stores of the world. You kind of want to steer clear of those in your business, in your personal credit journey. Reason being, if your goal is to get business funding, remember what we said, lenders judge you based off the increase. They also judge you based off of your accounts, right? What accounts you have reporting to your personal credit scores, to your profile. So the more tier 2, tier 3 big banks you have, the better it looks on your profile. All right. Awesome. So bank tiers. I'm a huge fan of Bank of America. I think that's the best large bank for business, small businesses. They offer 0% interest business credit cards. They offer up to 4 auto loans per LLC that you own, and they do business lines of credit for your business. So I'm a huge fan of Bank of America. Regional banks, I'm a huge fan of BB&T, aka Truist, and KeyBank. There are some other regional banks that are good, but if you have a Truist or a KeyBank, those will be your best route to take. And then as far as credit unions, there's pretty much credit unions in every state that'll offer you some type of personal loan, line of credit, business cards if they offer business funding, that you can tap into, pretty much being a part of the local community. Hold on one second, guys. All right, sorry about that. I had to pick up but just understand that there's different bank tiers, right? And then you can see here on the chart, the bank tiers, right? Tier 1, that's going to be those Chase, those City, those Chase City BOAs. But even with that, if the card is co-branded, you don't get 100% value. So for instance, this Chase, just assume this is a personal Chase card, right? This is a Chase Inc. Chase Inc. card, right? You see that Chase logo up at the top. If you have that on a personal credit card, you will get 100% value. So the Chase Sapphire, the Chase Unlimited. But let's say you have a Chase Southwest card or the Hyatt Chase. Even though it's a Chase card, you don't get the 100% value. That's why I say with the tier 1 banks, stick to the cards that have their logo on them, right? So that's why I'm a huge fan of my personal favorite credit card on the personal side is the American Express card, right? Because those American Express cards have the American Express logo on them, right? So like for instance, the American Express Platinum card has the American Express logo on it, right? So you can kind of you can't see that. The American Express, that's not a co-branded card. So that's why I'm a huge fan of tier 2 cards like Discover and American Express. I recommend, if you're building credit, if you're new to credit, or if you're looking to reestablish or establish a credit profile, I always start with American Express and Discover and one tier 1. So typically I would tell you get one tier 1, 2 tier 2s, American Express and Discover, or Capital One and PNC, however you want to do it, Truist, and then 3 tier 3s, right? 3 credit unions, 3 regional banks, 3 local community banks. Establish a credit profile. All right. Somebody's not on mute. All right. But that's how I personally would do it. All right. Any questions about that? The bank tiers? I don't see any in the chat. All right. We'll keep it rolling. Now, with revolving accounts, typically you pay the utilization. Utilization is reported to the credit bureaus once a month. So you want to pay attention to how you're putting spend on these cards, right? Now, a lot of people talk about manufacturer spending. That is a great way to, get higher limits, show the banks that you need higher limits, or you're using, more than what they gave you. So they give you more. But just be careful with that, Now, when you are, even though we talk about total utilization, let's say your total utilization is less than 20%, but let's say you have a $10,000 credit card and you max it out $5,000, that is still considered risk territory for the banks. That's still considered risky, because even though that one individual line is maxed out over, let's just say if you have 100,000 total in available credit, but that one $10,000 card is maxed out 5,000, banks kind of tend to shy away from that. So always keep your utilization per revolving account. If you're getting business funding, keep it around, keep it somewhere around 20%. So if it's a $10,000 card, keep it somewhere around $2K when it reports to the bureaus. I'm not saying don't spend only $2K. I'm saying if you spend more, if you spend $5 on the card, pay down $3,000 before it reports to the bureaus. And if you don't know when your card reports to the bureaus, an easy way to find out is to actually just call the credit card company, call them up, ask them, say, hey, do you know what day that this credit card reports to the credit bureaus? Because there's three important dates that you have to remember with credit accounts. It's the due date, the statement date, and then the reporting date. Whatever that statement date is, whatever your balance is on that card on the statement date, that is what gets reported to the bureaus. So always understand you want to, kind of keep your spend low as possible around the statement date so that you don't report high balances to the bureaus. All right. So just keep that in mind and you'll be good to go. All right. So due date versus statement date. Never just pay the minimum payment on a revolving account. Always pay a little bit more. If it's a minimum payment of $50, pay $55, pay $52. Because when you only pay the minimum, you kind of signal to the banks that, hey, I didn't have enough extra this month to pay on this minimum payment. Statement balances, right? That's the balances that get reported to the credit bureaus. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Again, like I said, whatever that balance is on your statement balance at that time, that is what gets reported to the bureaus. So just always be mindful of that. Okay. All right. And then due date, that starts the clock for the next billing cycle. Is this making sense for those of you on VIP? Is it making sense? Just want to make sure. All right, let's see. If you got questions, type them in the chat in YouTube, man. If y'all got questions, I can see the chat. The last time we did this, I couldn't see the chat, so I can see it now. But yeah. Awesome. Cool beans. And so if you're trying to grow your limits, you definitely want to put as much spend on as possible on them and then pay down, 1 to 3% before that statement date. So just if you're going to try to grow your limits, call the bank as soon as you get the card. So as soon as you get your American Express, your Capital One card, call the bank, say, hey, just want to know, when is this card going to report to the bureaus? And if they say, hey, we report on the 15th of every month, by the 13th, you need to have that card paid down to 1 to 3%. All right. And then you want to do this for, 1 to 2, maybe 3 billing cycles, and then ask for limits. Now, ideally, you want banks that give you limits based on a soft pull. So like American Express and Discover. One of the reasons why I like them is because they are tier 2, 100% value cards, but they also do soft pulls for limit increases. That's essential because you want to kind of minimize your hard increase as much as possible as you're building and applying for business funding. Now, when you keep your overall utilization around 3 to 5%, you're always in the game to apply for personal and business funding. So you're always in a position to get new credit when you need it. Now, as entrepreneurs, if you max out a credit card to make money, I'm not, necessarily telling you not to do it because, again, access to capital that we can leverage to fund our business and grow the company. Why not? Just be mindful that you kind of are putting yourself at a disadvantage of getting access to more funding. All right, so borrower versus consumer mindset, right? And this is what I try to stress to a lot of our clients, a lot of our students, is that you have to develop a borrower mindset. You don't want to be stuck as a consumer using credit. Using credit as a consumer does not benefit you both from your net worth perspective, as a business owner, and just overall in general when you're talking about financial habits. You always want to have a borrower mindset. Now, a borrower mindset says that, hey, I'm going to use this money. I'm going to pay you back what I borrowed from you so that you can give me more at a better interest rate. Versus a consumer just says, hey, I'm going to spend money. I'm going to borrow from you to spend money on goods and services and then make monthly minimum payments. And that's that. So always try to keep a borrower mindset over a consumer mindset. And you'll always be in a good position with credit. All right, now the 24-month look back period, right? This is important because this 24-month look back period impacts more than you think when it comes to not only your personal credit scores, but how banks look at you from a lending perspective, how banks view you from a lending perspective. All right, so the 24-month look back period, right? That's going to be the age of the account, the limits on the account, the balances on the account, and then the overall payment status. Have you ever been late within the last 24 months? Typically, this 24-month look back period is what FICO grades you the most on, okay? The last 24 months is what they're grading you on. All right, and so the 24-month look back period, let's just say the point value was 2 points, right? So month 3, you get 2 points. And then in month 6, you'll get 6 points, 3 times 2. And then in month 12, you'll get 8 points, 4 times 2. And then in month 24, you'll get 32 points, because at that point, that trade line has maxed out that 24-month look back period. So you see, you went from 2 points at 3 months to 8 points at 12 months. The longer you've had a credit card, the more of a point value they give you, right? The longer you've had a credit card or a revolving account or a personal loan, student loan, that 24-month look back period comes into play. All right. Now, here are some of the FICO borrowing behaviors that you may or may not be aware of. So these are some of the things that banks consider to be risky, right? And you can see here, right? One of the ones that's, kind of an eye opener is too many accounts recently opened. Again, when we talked about no new accounts in the last 90 days, because when you do that, when you open up a bunch of accounts in a short window, now you're more of a risk, because FICO doesn't know, okay, within the last 6 months, they don't have anything to really go off of, right? They don't know how you're going to handle these accounts 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. So anytime you're getting a lot of new accounts on the personal side, you typically want to do them within a short window, right? Typically, I do my personal rounds of funding either in the first quarter of the year or the fourth quarter of the year, depending on how my profile is set up, because I want those accounts to age together, right? You don't want to have sporadic aging of accounts. You kind of want your accounts to age together. So if you're going to get the Apple card, the Chase card, whatever card, Navy Federal, try to get them all in the same quarter of the same year so that they age together over time, right? As you keep those accounts open. All right. And then another one that you see here, right? Too many consumer finance accounts. Remember, we talked about those accounts with the store cards, the Macy's cards, the Belt cards, all those Synchrony Bank cards, all the furniture store cards. Those cards can impact you negatively when we're talking about your personal credit profile. Okay. It can impact you negatively. So just keep that in mind. Now, installment accounts. Typically with installment accounts, they're set up as a lump sum of money, AKA you have a term or an end date, right? So the difference between installment and revolving is with installment accounts, that's why they're weighted heavily on your profile, is that there's no end date, right? Whereas with a term loan, a mortgage, an auto loan, or something like that, there's a start date and an end date. So they know there's a term there, right? So they know that there's a period of time where you're paying on this, and then there's a period of time where you won't be paying. So typically, the first 12 months is where it impacts you the most, right? That's where you get the maximum amount of points and within the first 12 months. Now, installment accounts don't necessarily move the FICO score needle as much as revolving accounts, because again, like we said, revolving accounts, they're unsecured, they're much more of a riskier type of lending instrument, right? Because it's unsecured, it's revolving. You have access to that total amount that you can go and do whatever with, right? So they kind of monitor that. Now, ideally, right, installment accounts, they do help with your ability to be fundable, right? They show that you're able to borrow different types of funding. Remember, we talked about that 10%, the credit mix, right? Now, with an auto loan, it's a little bit different, right? Because an auto loan, you can kind of strengthen your profile that way. I'm more of a fan of an auto loan than a personal loan. I'm more of a fan of a personal loan than an auto loan. Meaning that if you took out a personal loan to buy a car cash, to me, that helps you better, because now you own the car. You got the title to the car and you got unsecured money. An auto loan is still kind of like a mortgage in the fact that it's secured by the vehicle, right? Now, typically the terms and, rates are a little higher, but I'm more of a fan of a personal loan than an auto loan if you're trying to build credit. That's just me, though. But just keep in mind, in installment loans, typically you want to try to pay up more than what you owe faster. So if you took out a $10,000 personal loan, I would say pay up 3 payments on the first payment. So let's just say the payments were $300 a month. I would go ahead and pay back $900, maybe $1,000 on that first payment, because now you're at a downward slope. Now you're showing that you're a good borrower, right? Hey, I took out a $10,000 loan, but I already paid back $1,000. Now I'm at like 10% utilization, and every month I'm paying down the debt at an accelerated pace. So just keep that in mind. It's a little bit of an advanced strategy. All right. Now, if you have credit challenges, everybody kind of clear on how to structure the personal credit, the ins and outs of how we want to build the personal credit profile so that we maximize the opportunities of funding? Okay. Awesome. YouTube, if y'all with me, man, definitely type in the comments, man. Let me know. Let me know if this is helpful, man. All right. So if you have credit challenges, right, we know that 1 in 5 people have errors or inaccuracies on their credit profile. It's probably a little bit higher. It's probably more like 2 in 5. You have to understand that credit bureaus are privately held, or they're publicly traded, but they're they work for their shareholders, right? TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, these are they are publicly traded companies. They don't work for the benefit of us as the consumer, right? They work for the benefit of the data furnishers who pay to furnish data, and they work for the benefit of the banks who, you know, they have relationships with. Case in point, a few years back, I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but TransUnion was bought out by Goldman Sachs, right? So Goldman Sachs owns the TransUnion Credit Bureau, or they invested heavily into it. So they are publicly traded companies. Now, an error can be as simple as a misspelled name, an incorrect address, or surname. I'm a junior, right? So if there's no junior on my credit file and they pull my credit and I put junior on the application, now that doesn't match. They're like, you know, yeah, this is your social, but on the credit report, there's no junior. Maybe I get denied, maybe I don't. So all of these things come into play. So just keep that in mind. All right, and then as far as types of negative items that may be reported on your account, right, on your credit file, it could be late payments, it could be collections or charge-offs, repossessions, or bankruptcies. All right, so these are some of the common things that are, you know, dragging your score down that you may have to, you know, clean up before you go for your round of funding. And so typically you have the right to dispute anything that's reported on your credit report, but it's also about going about it the right way, right? There is the Fair Credit Reporting Act that those of you who are in VIP, you should see that document in your Dropbox handout folder. But just understand that, you know, disputing negative items on your credit file doesn't have to be challenging, doesn't have to be confusing. You just have to understand the process to get them removed. All right. And so the types of disputes, you have factual disputes. Factual disputes is where you're using the Fair Credit Reporting Act laws and things like that to actually get items removed, right? So the date last active, you're disputing whether or not, you know, you have a right to privacy, right? Inside the Fair Credit Reporting Act, there's a law that states that you as the consumer have to sign a piece of paper to have the credit bureaus legally reporting information on your behalf, right? You have a right to privacy, right? They may be violating that right to privacy, right? Those are factual disputes. There's also something called Metro 2 compliance. Metro 2 compliance works a lot better because you're not necessarily saying that, hey, I was never late, or hey, you're violating my right to privacy, or, you know, my right to permissible purpose if it's inquiries. You're saying that, hey, I challenge you to show me that this is reporting how it's supposed to report 100% the way it was supposed to report. To understand Metro 2, you really have to do a little bit of homework, but I'll give you the short version. Metro 2 is a compliance reporting standard that TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, and I think Innovis, they all came to the table back in the late 98, 99, early 2000s. They sat down at the table and they came up with they agreed upon a reporting standard that all credit bureaus must adhere to. So anytime something's reported on your credit and it does not meet the Metro 2 compliance standard, it got to come off, right? It could be a collection, charge off, mortgage, student loan. If it does not meet the Metro 2 reporting compliance, it has to come off your credit report, right? And it can't be 99, it can't be 89, it can't be 79. It has to be 100%. So just keep that in mind. Metro 2 disputes, and I'm going to be breaking that down here on the channel. I'm going to be showing you guys some tools that you can use if you want to do more Metro 2 disputes versus factual. Factual still works. Factual is good, but I like factual after Metro, right? And I'll break that down in a later video. All right, so the best dispute tactics, you never want to dispute anything on your credit online. You waive all your rights to the FCRA. Never dispute online. I don't care what anybody's telling you. Oh, you can get the inquiries off. Just dispute it with Experian. No, because if it doesn't come off and you try to do a CFPB complaint, or if you try to do a Better Business Bureau or any of the, higher up credit bureaus, or, escalate a complaint, you won't have any success because you waived all your rights to the FCRA. Always send letters, always mail the letters, always write them yourself, or, use the Metro 2 software. Never, ever, ever do it online. All right. Now, some people say mail certified. I would tell you, if you're doing, if you're disputing like your name or your address or something like that, inquiries, if it's not something negative, you don't need to send the letter certified. If it's something that you're sending negatively, disputing a negative account, charge off, bankruptcy, collection, child support, that you definitely want to send certified on the first letter. The first letter that you send that certified. All right. Now, the steps for disputing negative items: you have to clean up the addresses. You have to get rid of the old addresses, the outdated information, because a lot of times if you have a collection or an old account, it could be tied to all those old addresses where you used to live. You have to clean that up first. Once you clean that up, then you start, attacking the negatives, right? The late payments, the charge-offs, collections. With late payments, I used to tell people do goodwill letters, but I would say at the time of this recording, goodwill letters are kind of hit or miss. I would not be sending goodwill letters to the credit bureaus. I would, however, send a goodwill letter to maybe the creditor themselves to see if maybe they will remove it. But then again, you're kind of admitting that, hey, I was late, right? Now, there's some different ways to dispute late payments that I like: billing error, or just trying to say that, the update is paid or inaccurate, do a factual dispute, something like that. I would dispute late payments factually, or, take the Metro 2 approach, but I wouldn't do goodwill letters at this point in the game. All right. I think we got somebody that's not on mute. All right. And then collections and charge-offs, never pay collections, even if it's reporting to you. I won't say never pay collections. Never pay a collection account to get it removed from your credit profile. If a collection company says, hey, if you pay us, we'll remove it from your credit, don't believe them. They will not remove that from your credit file. They have no reason to. I'm a fan, if it's a collection that's reporting, is do a pay for delete, right? So if you send a letter to them saying, hey, you say that I owe $1,000, I'm willing to give you $400 if you would agree to remove it from my credit. Always get it in writing. Never trust what someone says over the phone. If a collection company says, yeah, if you pay this, we'll delete it. Cool. I need it in writing. Pay for delete. Send a pay for delete letter. It's in that package, guys. For those of you that are in a VIP session, one of the dispute handout letters is the pay for delete letter. It's in there. And when you're doing a dispute with the collection agency, you always want to show that they have proof to collect in your state. Make them show you that, hey, you own this debt and you have the right to collect. Not just, hey, you owe Capital One $3,000. No, do I owe you $3,000? If I don't owe you $3,000, if you don't own this debt, please get off my line, right? Just tell them just like that. What proof or validation do they have saying that they own the debt and they can collect on the debt? Hopefully that made sense, man. So we'll break down over some future videos how to actually go about removing credit stuff off your credit. Y'all rocking with me? Y'all with me? VIPs? I know we've been kind of moving fast, man. Y'all here? Is this helpful? Let me know if this is helpful on YouTube in the chat. If you guys are learning, I always like to get feedback. Awesome, awesome. James says yes. Cool. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about business funding, right? This is what we came for. Now that we've structured our personal credit, we've built our personal credit profile, we've cleaned up our personal credit items, negative items on our personal credit. Now we're ready to go and attack the banks and get some of this funding. All right, so business credit, it has been established since the 1800s, right? Long before personal credit. Remember, personal credit came into the game mid-50s, got popping around the mid-70s, and became more widespread in the 90s. So business credit has been around a lot longer. Just a quick story about business credit, right? There was a gentleman by the name of Sam Walton, who we all know today as Walmart, right? He started the store Walmart, the conglomerate that we know as Walmart. Well, when he first got started building Walmart, he didn't have, a track record of being able to pay his vendors back. So what did he do? He was a salesman for Sears, right? Or was it JCPenney? I can't remember. He was a salesman, right? And so he would go to the markets and go to the different places and sell the items that he bought from vendors at a discount, right? That's what he was known for. He always passed the savings along to his customers. So what he would do is, as he would buy goods and items from his vendors, he would then go back and report that to Dun & Bradstreet, right? Building what we know today as the profile for Walmart, right? And understand that a business profile is not like personal credit. Anybody can pull your business profile. It's public information. It's not like personal credit where you have to authorize someone to pull your credit. You have to authorize them to see what's on your credit profile. Business credit profiles are public information. You can pull up Walmart profile right now, Microsoft, Google, any of these large corporations that have business credit profiles established. You can pull up that information. You can pull up information on your own business profile. So that's the difference between personal and business. Now, the three major business credit bureaus is going to be Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax Business, and Experian Commercial. All right. And I'm going to be breaking it down, those difference between those three in my ebook we got coming out later this month. So just understand that, business credit is a little bit different in how it works for personal credit. Now, one other thing to be mindful of is a business credit profile can be established one of two ways. Either you can get a DUNS number, open up vendor accounts, and then have those vendor accounts report, or you can open up vendor accounts with Uline, Quill, Granger, all of the different ones. And then when they report to the bureaus, then you get a DUNS number or profile created. So either you can establish it or the vendor the bureau can establish it. So it can happen one or two ways. That's why a lot of people, when they come in our program, they say, oh, I don't have a DUNS profile, but then we look on NAV and they do have vendor credit. All right. So just keep that in mind. Now, here are the 5 steps that we use to help you build business credit. All right, so step number 1 is you want to form the business, right? LLC, S Corp, C Corp. Then you want to set up bank compliance. Next, you want to set up your online listings. 4, you want to open up small vendor trade line accounts. And then number 5, you want to reach out to local banks and credit unions, okay? So local banks and credit unions, that's who you want to reach out to, okay? And we'll kind of break this down by each step, right? So step number 1, you want to form the business, right? Your C Corp, S Corp, LLC. If you're confused or if you have questions about which entity is best for your business, I will get with a CPA or a tax professional ASAP. I will consult with your tax professional and an attorney. I am not either one of those. I'm just telling you the type of entities that you can establish. Now, if you want to establish an LLC, that is the most flexible for business funding, is the most flexible entity that you can create. But it's not the only entity, because a lot of people say just open up an LLC. Well, LLC may not work for you. You may need an S Corp, you may need a C Corp. Either way, you can still get access to funding. Like I said, that's a tax professional question. Which one is best for you? Now, if you're using a sole prop with an EIN number, you can get business credit cards. So if you are a sole proprietor and you have an EIN number, you can get business credit cards on your sole prop EIN as well. But again, always consult your tax professional on which entity is right for you, okay? Mr. Abidi said he's on the DMB now, pending at the moment. Got it. Now, when you form the business, you can utilize a free resource to set up your C Corp, S Corp, or LLC. It is inkforfree.com. So you can go on inkforfree.com. The only thing that you will pay is the Secretary of State filing fee. So that's the fee that you would have paid anyway, but they will do all the paperwork. They'll send it off in the mail. They'll keep you updated on every step of the process until it gets accepted by the Secretary of State, and then you're good to go. All right. And then from there, once you set up the business entity, you can get an EIN number from the Secretary of State, and then you can open up a business bank account. And then from there, you're off to the races. All right. So form the business. One thing you want to make sure that you're being mindful of when you're forming the business is you want to use kind of an industry neutral, non-industry specific name, right? So solutions, enterprises, industries, something like that. Something where you're not tied to a specific industry like trucking or real estate, etc. Now, when you set up the business bank account, try to do it as soon as you get the EIN number, because it's been said that some banks view the age of your LLC not when it's created on the Secretary of State, but when you actually establish the business bank account. Whether or not that's true, I still say adhere to open up the business bank account as soon as possible. All right. Hopefully this is good stuff. Now, with bank compliance, you want to make sure that your company is bank compliance, meaning having a physical address, local phone number, and all of that good stuff, right? Email address, and sometimes fax. It's not always a fax number. Most banks and lenders, and even most Net 30 vendors, will want you to be bank compliant in order to extend credit to you. So setting this up as number 2 is not number 5, is not number 6. Number 2. Right? So many people try to skip steps, skip around. Well, I got my EIN, I'm gonna just go in the bank and get a business credit card. No, establish the business bank compliance, follow the steps, and you'll have much success. All right. Now, physical address, no PO box, no UPS store, no iPostal, no questions asked. I'm not going to tell you don't get this. Just be mindful that if you use a PO box, UPS, or iPostal, that's kind of one of the lower tiers, just be prepared that that address may or may not be red flag. My personal recommendations and suggestions for virtual offices would be OPUS virtual offices, and then Regis offices, more specifically Regis Spaces. So if you go to www.spacesworks.com, that is the address that I would use. Orlando said, what to do if you forget what entity you form your business under? All you have to do is go to the Secretary of State, Orlando. Just go to the Secretary of State, pull up your file, and it'll say LLC, corporation, whatever you form. All right, so establishing your domain, your website, and your business email. I recommend GoDaddy.com for all your domains. That's who I use. If you want a cheaper option or a more cost-affordable option, you can go HostGator.com, or you can do oneandone.com. Both of those are more cheaper, affordable options. I prefer GoDaddy because of the speed and the accuracy, and they have deals all the time, but they are more expensive than the other two. So you want to secure your domain when you get your entity set up. All right, and then most business owners, they kind of skip around, but you do want to get your domain ASAP. Now, when you're setting that up, you get your domain. Now you want to go to step number 3, which is setting up your online listings. Your online listings are free. There are some free resources that you can use for your online listings. Yelp.com, that's free. 411.info, that is free. Google My Business, that is free. YP, yellowpages.com. Those are all free resources that you can use to get your business listed online, get it visible. Google My Business, one thing to keep in mind with the Google My Business listing, you want to be adding pictures once a month to your Google profile, right? And I haven't been doing a great job of that with our business, but you want to be adding pictures, you want to be adding reviews, you want to be adding things consistently, because as you kind of go through the process, more and more, Google is reviewing these business profiles more and more. So they're looking at how many times you're posting, what you're posting, what reviews you have. You don't want to get, 10 reviews in like 10 minutes. That's kind of spammy and a red flag. And then you also don't want to be using those mail drop or UPS stores. They will take your Google listing down. Ask me how I know. Okay. So just be mindful of the mail drop and UPS locations. It will get your Google listing flagged and taken down. All right. So make sure you have obtained your virtual address, and then make sure all your information is listed on the Secretary of State. The other thing is, if you have a website, make sure it's mobile friendly, right? You can go on Fiverr.com, hire a VA, virtual assistant, to make you a website that is mobile friendly. Make sure that you emphasize that it's mobile friendly, okay? Because most searches on Google and YouTube and places like that are done on mobile. They're not done on desktop anymore. People on the go, they're on their phones. All right, so step number 4. This is a step that gets most people tripped up and confused and going on YouTube, staying up late at night, trying to figure out, how do I build business credit? It's simple. You start with a DUNS number, you open up vendor accounts, and then you use them and they report. But you don't need a lot of them. So typically what I tell people is you want to get 3 trade lines that report to Dun & Bradstreet, 2 trade lines that report to Experian, and now I would say 2 that report to Business Equifax. So I'll break these down, right? Dun & Bradstreet, if you have 3 or more trade lines reporting, that's going to trigger a Paydex score. If you have 2 or more reporting on Experian, you probably get an 80 or a 90 business credit score. And if you have 2 or more reporting on Business Equifax, if a bank was to pull that profile and you have that established, they will favor that more so than if you don't have anything on your Business Equifax. So 2 on Business Equifax, 2 on Business Experian, and then 3 on Dun & Brad, and you're done. All right. You do that in 30 days. Now, my recommended tier net 30 vendor accounts are going to be nav.com. They're going to give you 1 trade line that reports to all 3 business bureaus when you set up the Boost plan or the Loan Builder plan. All right, so either the Boost plan or the Loan Builder plan is going to get you to that first trade line on all 3 business bureaus. Uline is another one. They report to Dun & Bradstreet and Business Experian. Another one is going to be Quill. They report to Dun & Bradstreet. Now, they are a little sporadic when they report, but typically, if you place multiple orders within a 30 to 45-day period, they will report that to the Dun & Bradstreet. Now, another one is going to be Summa Office Supplies and Strategic Network Solutions, right? Those are the ones that I recommend as a bonus, as an add-on. All of these other TikTok and vendor accounts that buying a list of all these different vendors, you don't need them. They're good to have, but you don't need them to build business credit, okay? Now, gas cards, if you're going to go the gas card route, I would go with the Fleet Core, either BP or Fuelman MasterCard, all right? So hopefully that helps. All right, and then the best gas cards, again, like I said, WEX used to be good. They are asking for a personal guarantee now, so I don't recommend WEX like I used to. I would go with Fleet Core. I would go with either the BP MasterCard, the Comdata card, gas card, or the Fuelman MasterCard, Fuelman gas card. All right. Now, at step 5, you want to reach out to local banks and credit unions, right? Now, just understand that, where we are now, banks are tightening up the lending guidelines on how to get approved for funding. So just be mindful that, relationships matter at this point in the game. Relationship banking will take you a lot further with approvals than just sporadically going to just random banks that you see on the side of the road and asking for funding. So Brenda asks, how much to order from on Uline and Quill and how often? I would say at least $80 to $100. Now with Uline, the interesting thing about Uline is if they approve you, even if they don't give you net payment terms, even if they say, hey, we won't give you net terms, they still report if you get approved for the account, they're going to report to the bureaus. So I would say, 80 to $100. And then Tracy said, what score do you have to have before applying? You don't need scores for the ones I mentioned, Tracy. Those are going to be the ones where if you don't have vendor accounts or if you don't have anything reporting, they still will extend credit to you, net 30 vendor credit. Hopefully that makes sense. Yep, you're welcome. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Now with the local, when reaching out to banks, you want to focus on local banks, community banks, and credit unions that are ideal for business funding, right? Those are going to be your best chances, right? Not to neglect the Wells Fargo. For those of you who are new, if you subscribe to the channel, if you've been around, you've seen the content, we talked about the Wells Fargo 100K play. It's, hasn't been slowing down. But the local banks, the credit unions, the community banks, those are going to be where you get the best bang for your buck as far as how much funding you can get, what credit score and lending guidelines they have in place. They're a little bit lower, and they're a little bit more lenient with what they accept as lending guidelines, right? And then your goal is to find as many local banks as possible. Someone on YouTube said, is iPostal virtual address okay? I hear some negative. Yeah, I would stay away from it, Mr. Abidi. I wouldn't get anything on iPostal. But if you are going to use iPostal, what I would recommend is whatever list they pull up, they say, hey, these are the available addresses in your city, your state, whatever. Put those addresses in Google and see what comes up on Google Maps. If it's a storage facility, warehouse, whatever, then that's not a good one. But if it's an office building, maybe you drive by the office building, get out your car, park, go inside, look around. That's what I recommend, Mr. Abidi. I hope I'm saying that right. But that's what I recommend. I would recommend getting the list from iPostal, all the ones that look like office buildings, drive to them, park your car, get out, go inside, and then just kind of look around, see what's going on, and see if it's a legit office space. If it's not, I will keep it pushing. Again, I recommend Regis spacesworks.com. The Spaces brand of Regis is what I recommend. It's a shared office space, and they're in most major cities. All right, so tips for reaching out to banks. You want to build rapport with either the branch manager or the vice president of business lending. Those are going to be the best points of contact for getting funding. And then you want to apply. You don't want to necessarily apply for funding right away. You're just trying to get a little bit of information. So typically, I always tell people when you have that first conversation with a banker, you're just trying to find them. You're just trying to feel them out. And we'll get into the interview, the questions, and how you want to go about it. But you're just trying to fill them out. You just want to see what products or lending products they have available. And then it's always a good question to find out what bureau they pull. It's always a good question. Someone on YouTube, Julie said, I applied for Staples Net 30 yesterday. The rep says they report the DMB. That's good. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, because that's backed by Citi. The Staples Net 30 is backed by Citi. So yeah, that's a good one. The reports are done in Bradstreet. Julie says, do you have a contact at Fleet Corps? Yes, if you email me, Julie, info@cbcanetwork.com, I'll reply back with the Fleet Corps. Yeah. Where was I at? I'm sorry. I lost track. Okay, building rapport with the bankers, right? You definitely want to do that. And then find out what bureau they pull. Now, someone asked, Tracy said, do you have to have a score before applying at local banks? Do you have to have a credit score or business score? When you say score, can you be a little more specific?
The business score.
It depends on the bank.
Okay.
Now, with like banks that pull the Experian, like for instance, TD Bank, they use the SBSS score. So you want to know what that is before you apply. Whereas like a credit union like Truliant Federal Credit Union, they just base it all off personal credit. But again, that's kind of, I mean, even like Wells Fargo, sometimes they pull business Equifax. Well, not sometimes, but for the lines of credit, they pull business Equifax. So you do want to kind of have something there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you recommend the banks that we go to locally that we already be a member of?
it's
mean,
ideal with the way things are setting up now. So that's why I say you kind of got to be a little selective.
yeah.
In the fact that, you know, you may only want to deal with a handful of banks. So like, remember we talked about the bank tiers. You may do all your personal and business banking with the Wells Fargo, right? So that may be your first stop, number one. And then what area are you in? I can try to give you some banks off the top of my head, kind of give you a sequence.
I'm in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama.
So let's say for Alabama, then so let's say your first bank may be Wells Fargo. That may be your tier one bank that you got a relationship with. Then your next bank may be a Truist, right? That may be the one that you open up business accounts with. And then your credit union might be Redstone, right? Redstone is in Alabama, as well as Regions Bank. So you just kind of get a handful at a time. Don't try to, don't try to go to like 15 different banks and get credit cards off the gate. You know what I'm saying? Go to like 3 or 4 to 5 that you can keep a couple dollars in a business account and then start cycling through the next round. Keep you like 3 to 5 that you build in, and then 3 to 5 that okay, next I'm gonna hit Chase, I'm gonna hit Truist, I'm gonna hit, you know what I mean?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out to Georgia, Miss Will Invest 1. Shout out to Georgia, man. Love Georgia. Georgia just won the national championship, right? Football. I think that was them. Yeah, that was the Bulldogs. Yeah. Okay. Anywho, so just when you go into the local banks, one thing too is you always want to build rapport, but you don't want to have a one-sided conversation. So typically I always tell people when you are going to a bank, or if you're asking about, some of their business lending products, try not to be so forthcoming. Try to make it conversational. You know what I mean? And that's just basically having a conversation. Don't make it one-sided. Don't you ask 5 questions without them asking you a question. Or don't always talk about how you want to get funding, and you don't talk about, hey, how long have you been at the bank? Do you like working at the bank? What has your experience been with small business owners who come in with less than perfect credit? That's another question that a lot of people don't ask. Some banks may not necessarily harp as much on your personal credit if you have established a relationship with them. I know with Truist Bank specifically, they tend to look at the total relationship, how much in deposits, not just personal credit. So the more established a relationship you have, you may have a better chance of getting funding versus like a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America. They just going strictly off your credit score because they're a larger institution. Brenda said, what is the amount balance you should keep in the business? Oh, we're going to get to that, Brenda. We're going to get to that very, very shortly. Yep, I got you. YouTube's KL Superior said, do you have any recommendations on building your Experian business profile? Yeah, I would say the Chase business credit cards, the Chase cards, they report to business credit. Navy Federal business credit card, my Navy Federal business credit card, it reports to business credit. PayPal, if you get a PayPal loan, I did a PayPal loan, business loan, they report that to business Experian. Any of the Synchrony trade lines, I know the Amazon Net 55 went away, but the Lowe's, Sam's Club, those all report to business Experian. And then the City AA Advantage business credit card, or the Costco City Visa, those both report to business credit. So that where is it at? The American Airlines City Visa, or is it MasterCard? I'm sorry. That report, the City cards, business cards report to Dun & Bradstreet and business Experian. So hope that helps, KO Superior. And then KO said, also, does the utilization matter when it comes to the business credit? If so, what percent? Yeah, I'm noticing that because I use that Business City credit card, AA card, and my Experience score tends to go down when I max that card out. So I've been paying it down more. I wasn't really, because with the business cards, they don't impact your personal utilization, but they do impact your business profile utilization. Yeah. Yep. But just make sure you have rapport with the banker. Don't try to make it one-sided. I always try to meet with the vice president of business lending or the branch manager, not knocking any banker or anybody who works at a bank, but typically you want to be having conversations with people who are either the decision maker or are next to the decision maker. You want to be getting firsthand information, if, at all times. So that's my recommendation. And then, once the business profile is established, then now you're ready to apply for funding. So I remember someone asking, do you need scores? I would say once you got 2 to 3 trade lines, 4, then it's time. You can apply before that now. Don't get it twisted. If you're at a 760, 720, 740 credit and you bank with Chase, that by all means, while you're building the profile, go ahead and apply. Don't wait too long. I will say that. All right. Now, how do we get unlimited funding, right? You want to establish a fundable business profile, no high-risk industry codes, right? And if you need a lower-risk industry code, these are the codes that you can use: management, e-commerce, education. For those of you, if you're doing Turo, you can code up on the auto repair versus dealership. A lot of people in Turo try to code as a car dealership. Car dealerships are considered to be high risk. Code up under auto repair. It's a little bit, less riskier of an industry code. All right. YouTube said, my Experian business has gotten low score. Probably got some utilization going on. That's probably more than likely what it is. This was best. I have bad credit. What would you suggest for me to do to get started? I would say clean up your personal credit. When you say you have bad credit, is it just high balances or is it like collections, charge-offs? If it's some negative items, then I would say, clean up your personal credit. If you need help with that, we are going to be putting out more credit repair videos about that. But I would say get with a credit repair professional or get the ebook that we have coming out is going to show you step by step how to clean your personal credit, show you exactly what tools we use. But yeah, I will clean up the personal credit first and then circle back and get funding. Now, if you have revenues, I would say if you're doing, let's say $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month, then you got opportunities with like Stripe, PayPal, all the different payment processors, because those payment processors see that you have revenue. So they're basing the loan or the line of credit off of you having revenue. All right. Hopefully that helps. Now, when we're talking about being fundable, ideally we do want to be business owners and not self-employed. We don't want to be self-employed. We want to be employees. So we don't want to be a business owner. We don't want to be self-employed. We want to be employed in the eyes of the lender. So you want to make sure that you have a solid personal credit profile. The no PG stuff is kind of hit or miss. PayPal, Stripe, all of these different places, QuickBooks, they offer no personal guarantee funding or low credit score funding. They're looking at the revenue. So you need the revenue. If you don't have the revenue, then no PG may not be the option for you to start with. All right. And then as far as the management company, ideally, when we're setting up our LLC, we want to be and establish a management funding entity. So a lot of you in the VIP session were asking, how do you set up a parent-child relationship with your LLCs? Ideally, you want to set up, hold on one second. So ideally, you want to set up a parent-child relationship, right, with your LLC. So let me see if I can hop on Zoom and kind of break that down. But ideally, client-based, consultant-based is kind of low risk, even though I've been hearing that that's more high risk nowadays. single member is another way to establish it. And then, you know, you can use the 80 Paydex strategy to establish a business profile. So why am I not? Second, y'all. Now I am. Oh, there we go. Why did I switch though? Hold on 1 second, y'all. Trying to get it right. It just switched me to. Oh man, what did Zoom just do? Man. What? All right, can y'all still? Y'all can still. Y'all can't see my screen. All right, so I need to join. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. All right, can y'all still see my screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. I don't know why YouTube can't see it. All right, cool. All right, so I'm gonna pull the iPad up in a minute. But basically, the way I was saying to structure your LLC is you want to set it up to be a parent-child relationship, but that management, that parent entity, you kind of want to be that single member because, again, banks are going to want you to personally guarantee. So if you have multi-members and let's say one member does or does not have established credit, or if maybe they, you know, haven't established the company that long, it could present some challenges and some problems. So typically what I would tell you is if you want to partner, if you have a business partner, they get their LLC, you get your LLC, and then your LLCs combine to form a new LLC. That's the easiest way for you guys to always be able to get position, because you can get 100,000, they can get 100,000, then you guys can put that 100,000 to work. All right. So that's ideally how I would do it. Now, with these banks, right? Remember that fundability matrix, banking relationships, aka having deposits, that is going to be a big factor in how much banks will lend to you. Someone was asking earlier about, hey, how do I get funding for a brand new LLC? One of the easiest ways is to establish a business bank account with multiple entities and run deposits through them, right? So as you start to make sales, you start to put deposit money in the business bank account. Now you have the ability to go back to that bank with a 700, 720, 740 FICO score and get a business credit card with a high limit or 0% interest. All right. All right. So, you know, income and taxes, you know, showing tax returns does help because it shows that you have a track record. Now, whoops. With this bank relationships, I'm gonna pull up this whiteboard. Let's see. Set the host. All right, so let's ideally say that, you know, we want to use, let's say you want to go to a new bank, right? So let's say this is Truist. Ideally, the way you want to start the relationship off is by showing deposits, right? So it's 1, 2, 4, 7, right? And with this strategy, what you're doing is, let's say you open up the business account with $200. Ideally, anything below this threshold, this is risky. Because anytime you're not keeping at least this amount of money in the business account, banks typically look at that as risky, right? And so ideally, what you want to do is this 1247, right, is as you start to, get sales and put money in your business bank account, you want this number to grow. So let's say you started off with 200. Now you at 2,000. Next month, let's say this is first month, you at 2,000. The next month, you got 4,000. And then let's say fourth month, or let's say third month, every month you're increasing this business bank account, right? And you get it to, let's say, 10K. Now, even with a new LLC, the bank is a little more comfortable. Not saying that they guarantees you will get business funding, but they're a little more comfortable because they can see month over month, you're adding more to your average daily balance. You're keeping more money in the business account. You are establishing a relationship. So that 1247 is critical, that bank rating. They call this bank rating. Sorry for the chicken scratch, but that bank rating, that is what can kind of eliminate necessarily being in business for 2 years, having 2 years tax returns, bank statements. Now, is that with every bank? No. But some banks do look at the relationship, Truist being one of them. That's why I use that as an example. Now, the other thing I like about Truist is that they also take into consideration personal income. So if you have a job, you have a W-2, if you work a job, they look at that income as well. So if you, again, like I said, if you have personal and business bank accounts with a bank, that could, be the determining factor on whether or not they'll lend to your business as a new LLC. Does that kind of make sense? How I broke that down? Okay. All right, guys. Let me get back to these slides. Julie said, I used to deposit my work check in my account for activity unless I was in full swing. So my business was in full. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could technically deposit your work check into your business. I don't know how the IRS views that, but yeah, you could do that. That's a strategy. Yeah. And then KL Superior said, I have multiple business bank accounts, but one issue is for my major deposits, what should I be putting in the other bank accounts? I would say just transfer $100 a month, until you get ready to ask for some funding and maybe move over a bigger amount. But if you're just gardening, if you're just, establishing a relationship, just keep $200 in there at all times and you'll be fine. When it's time to go over there, maybe put a little bit more. That's what I would do, KO Superior. And as far as weekly, I would say as long as your business account doesn't have any negative days, that's the main thing. No negative days, right? And when I say negative days, I mean with that particular institution. So if you're going from Truist to Wells Fargo, you want to make sure that at Wells Fargo, you haven't had any negative days before you ask for funding, or vice versa. Yeah. So, yep. Now, again, we're talking about, establishing credit profile, 720, 740 for the business lines of credit, 680, 720 for credit cards with high limits. The lower the risk industry, the better. But again, as long as you keep the industry out of your actual name, you should be fine. Now let's talk about how to interview banks, how to have a conversation with banks, so that you can get access to funding. So one of the things you want to do is when you're having conversations with banks, you want to make sure that you ask the right questions in a conversational manner, right? No rapid fire, hey, how do I get a personal credit card? Hey, by the way, what's the limit? Oh, by the way, what bureau do you pull? Make it conversational, make it, back and forth dialogue, and you'll have a better success rate. Too many times people want to go to a banker and, throw up on them, tell them everything. That's why a lot of times with my clients, when we're working together, I'm like, look, this is what they need to know. This is what we tell them, this is how they want to see the application filled out. We're not going to add, we're not going to subtract, right? Because when you start to get to talking or getting, just spilling the beans, sometimes you may be giving out TMI, you may be giving them too much information, right? Not saying lie to them, that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is you don't have to rapid fire ask a bunch of questions and go back and forth. All right. So again, when you're speaking with the banker, don't let them just give you, one word answers. Yeah, 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 okay, yep. When they start doing that, I get up and walk out, because that person is not helpful and they are not trying to see me get approved. So if you get one of those type of bankers, or if you walk in a branch and there's just a lot of one word questions, they really don't have answers, they really can't explain their programs to you in detail, let's go to the next bank. It's the easiest thing I can tell you. Now, when you're doing this, like I said, don't make the conversation about you. Always build rapport. Ask the banker how they're doing. Ask them how do they like working at the bank? That's one of my go-to questions. If I'm going to a new bank, if I'm making a new bank relationship, hey man, how do you like this bank? Do you like working here? Are they really, community focused? Do they really care about small businesses? That's just, rapport. All right. And then again, when we talk about bank funding programs, you have full doc, meaning you need 2 years tax returns, 2 years bank statements, 2 years of 2 years tax returns, bank statements, and sometimes they want to see personal tax returns. And then you have low doc. This is my favorite. The low docs, they may want 1 year tax returns, they may want 4 months business bank statements, or they may want, your most recent 1 year tax returns. Low doc is ideally where you want to be. They ask for one form of paperwork, whether it's 1 year taxes, 3 months business bank statements, or they may ask for, 6 months business bank statements, something like that. Low doc is the sweet spot. Now, of course, no doc is what most people are aiming for, but just be mindful that only about a handful of banks, only about 10 to 15% of the banks are going to offer no doc programs. That's why back in, I think it was May or April, when as soon as we learned that Wells Fargo was doing no doc funding, came right to the live stream and I gave it to the people, because when these opportunities present themselves, they don't always last forever. So I know most people on the internet and people out in the space are promoting no doc, but just understand that no doc can be here today and gone tomorrow, based on the economy, based on the way banks are and what lending mood they're in. It's a lot of things that go into play when you're talking about no doc funding. Do you have a relationship? A lot of these things come into play. All right. Now, this is kind of the end, guys. I do appreciate everybody on YouTube for continuing to rock with me. Make sure, if you have not yet, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video. It helps the content get out, man. Y'all share this video. If you think it was helpful, share it out. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. But I do appreciate everybody for rocking with me. But I want to leave y'all with one piece of mindset, because as you go along on this journey, it will get difficult. Remember, I started 2020 out the gate, January, late payment hit all 3 bureaus, or 2 of the 3 bureaus. At that point, I had a decision to make. I could have said, all right, let's just fold it in for this year. This year, we're not going to get no funding. Or I could have said, all right, let me go ahead and do what I need to do, establish the relationships, clean my credit, figure out how to get in contact with these bank managers and these branch managers, and make it happen. And $180,000, I mean $72,000 later, we made it happen. Now, so I say all that to say, if you are afraid to fail, then you probably are going to fail, right? Shout out to the late Kobe Bryant, rest in power. That was his quotes, but is very powerful quote because most people automatically assume they're going to fail, but they haven't even tried yet. So my advice to you, give it a shot. Go to your local branch managers. Go to Google, type in top SBA lenders list, and call up 2 or 3 banks on that list and just have a conversation. Don't even ask them about funding, right? And then, go from there. But don't be afraid to fail, family. That's the main thing I wanted to put out there. Absolutely. For those of you on YouTube, KL Superior said, can you use a credit card to fund deposit only? I don't know about Truist. Most credit unions will allow you to do that. We were getting into that on the VIP session, KO Superior. I don't know about Truist though. I don't think they will let you. I don't think Truist will allow you to open up your business bank account with a credit card. I don't think. But anyway, like I said, if you're afraid to fail, you're probably going to fail. So don't be afraid to fail. Execute on the information. Execute. That is the word for 2023. Now, for those of you who enjoyed today's presentation, if you got value from this, we are going to be hosting our next 3-day business funding sprint. So it's not a 1-day situation. This is the last 1-day training that we're doing. And we're now breaking it out into 3 days. It is a 3-day business funding sprint. I'll put the information in the link in this description. It is 3 days. Day 1, we are going to cover everything we talked about today. We're going to show you personal credit mastery, how to establish, how to clean, and how to structure your personal credit profile. So day 1 is going to be all about personal credit. Day 2, we're going to show you the lenders that offer no doc. We're going to show you the ones that do no PG. We're going to show you how to actually establish the vendor credit profile and what it entails, how it should look, what reports, who reports, everything about business credit mastery, right? And then day 3, we're going to actually facilitate how to go through, and I'm going to give you my $1 million strategy, how you can go to each bank, how you can go to 10 banks and get 100,000 from each bank. Okay. So we're going to break that down. What banks on the West Coast, the East Coast, down South, every single region of the country. We're going to show you the banks that will offer you no doc, low doc, and high limit business credit cards, right? So it's going to be 3 days. And on the 4th day, we got a bonus day. If any of you guys come to the 4th day, I am going to bring on my bank contacts. So we'll have our funding partners at Rock Financial. They will be on the call. We'll have the banker from Truist, my actual personal banker who our clients get funding with. He will be there. I'll make sure of it. And Bank of America. I'm going to try to see if I can get my bank contact at Bank of America, which is a tier 1 nationwide lender. So if you would like to attend that, just comment me below or in the chat, and we'll reply back with the link to sign up for the 3-day funding sprint. It does start February 1st, so you got about 2 weeks to register for it. But again, it's going to start February 1st. We're probably going to start about 6 p.m. 6 p.m. for the VIP session. If you want to attend general admission and get added to the Facebook group, it's the same as this one. Pay anything. We're keeping that pay anything all year for these trainings because we don't want price to be the reason why you don't get this knowledge. So if you want to come to the 3-day sprint and just listen in or just get the information via Facebook, you can pay anything. If you want VIP access where you get access to me, the bankers, asking questions and things like that, then that's the VIP option. So we'll have all the links and everything in the description. But for those of you who attended today, I appreciate y'all for continuing to rock with me. VIPs, don't go anywhere because we still got a whole nother hour for Q&A, and we'll get into it. So again, thank you, YouTube, for rocking with me. As always, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, man. It helps the content get out to a wider audience. And we greatly appreciate the support, man. So we're going to sign off YouTube. We'll holler at y'all next week on the live. All right.